I am the founder and managing editor of Waterbury Press. Thank you so much for tuning in, and welcome to our first virtual meet and greet. Our guest tonight is Kirk Raeber. He is an award-winning author of the historical fiction novel, Forgotten Letters. And his latest release is a little bit different than a historical fiction novel. It is a picture book entitled Don't Step on the Spider, which he's lately had translated into Spanish. Without further ado, let's welcome Kirk and hear directly from him as to his achievements to date and his plans for the future. Since I'm the one-woman show here, I'm also the producer. So let me let Kirk in from the waiting room. Hold on just one second. Okay, here he comes. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, wonderful. So, thank you so much for joining us, for letting me interview you, and thank you so much for having your books at Waterbury Press. We have great plans for the future.
It's my pleasure. It's been a great experience.
I'm so happy to hear that. Well, before we begin officially, I wanted to let everyone know that Kirk and I go way back to the days when we used to hang out at the local Barnes and Nobles all over San Diego, doing was it local author events that we were doing?
They were local author events, and they were attended only by local authors of San Diego County, and really nobody else. And it was amazing how there are quite a few local San Diego authors with very good books out there.
It was a very exciting time in Mira Mesa, in what was it La Mesa as well?
La Mesa, Grossmont Center.
Grossmont, yeah. Yeah. Well, you've always been a believer in my cause ever since we first met, like 5 years ago. Or, so I really appreciate you to the moon. I think that the last time we saw each other was in 2018, wasn't it? It was in Mira Mesa when we were launching my 7 Ghostly Spins, right?
Correct. Yes, that was the last time. Yes.
Wow, it's been a long time.
Time flies. Time flies.
Gosh, and how the world has changed, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I really do miss those book launches and the book signings. What was nice about it is that I met so many wonderful authors and had bought many of their books and read their books, and was introduced to you with all your wonderful books, and it was a fun time for me, and I hope we get back to doing the same thing in the future.
Yeah, to doing similar things. Although, I mean, with the way that the world has changed, I wonder if, especially for independent authors like we are, this is the way to go. I mean, I wonder if this is how it's going to stay, because, I mean, I remember that even in 2019, we were already kind of having a hard time getting into stores like Barnes and Noble to do book signings, because they were, just piling on the restrictions and being way more choosy about who comes and goes, and
That's correct. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think that in a way, I felt that we were kind of being edged out of the market for being independent. And I'm thinking that here comes COVID, and it kind of forces everyone to go virtual. And then all the work that we were doing to kind of put together a platform is all of a sudden starting to pay off, because we've been trying to build a following and we've been succeeding at it. And And now we have a product to present to that platform, and it doesn't require us to be accepted at a brick and mortar store, right?
Correct.
To show it. So I have high hopes for where we're headed with this new, you know, method of promoting ourselves, I guess. But
Well, certainly it's a different method, and we will see if it continues. I've done a number of Zoom meetings in the last year and a half, and it's very interesting. I'm not sure it's the way of the future, but we'll see. Right now we have to deal with it, and we have to do what we're doing right now to promote our books.
right. Well, to get started, what I was hoping for is that you know how they have those memes going around where they say how it started and how it's going. I was thinking that maybe we could do a segment like that with you, where you can tell us how you got started, you know, a little bit about your background, you know, like I don't know, is it David Copperfield? I'm born. So just kind of ground us as to
Okay.
who you are, what you do, and how you got into the writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I grew up in Denver, Colorado,
Oh, nice.
and went to school there, and I went to college in Denver, and really wasn't sure what I wanted to do after college. I thought maybe I'd go into biology and maybe become a teacher, something like that. And I became interested in medicine and applied, had pretty good grades, and applied to a couple of medical schools and was accepted. I went to medical school and osteopathic school in Des Moines, Iowa. And it was a private school, and it was pretty expensive. So I applied for a military scholarship, and at that time they had the Navy, Air Force, and Army scholarships, and was accepted to both the Navy and the Air Force. And I decided on the Navy because the Navy had the best bases around the world. So I was going to be stationed someplace. I didn't want to be stationed in North Dakota, where the Air Force had their bases, but they have nice bases around the world. So that's what I did. So I chose that. I had to do a civilian internship after medical school. And after that, the Navy called me to active duty. And I chose to go to Okinawa, Japan as my first duty assignment. And the reason I did that is so that I could come back to San Diego. And I spent some time in San Diego during my training, and I wanted to come back to San Diego. And so when one goes to certain duty stations, and Okinawa was one of them, you got to pick of your choice of the next duty station. So that's what happened. So I went to Okinawa, Japan, was assigned to the Marines, and spent time with the Marines. We traveled up to Korea and camped out for 6 weeks one time, and then 4 weeks the next. And that was very interesting. And then came back to San Diego and worked in the emergency department at Balboa Hospital, and spent another 6 years there. And then I decided to get out of the Navy. I didn't want to make a career out of it. And it was time for me to leave. So I had some contacts in San Diego, and started working at a couple of emergency rooms around San Diego, and was part-time for a while, and then became full-time in the Scripps Hospital in Chula Vista. It wasn't Scripps at that time, but it eventually became Scripps. And so I worked there for 20 some years, 25 years.
Wow.
And 2 years ago, I retired. and very happy, and I've continued to be busy and not bored. During that time, working, I read a lot. I always would read a lot, but never had thoughts of writing a book.
Mm.
So,
Well, having read the Forgotten Letters, I'm trying to get us to the point where you tell us, how did that come about? I mean, so if you had no idea, I mean, when did you know that you wanted to write a book?
okay, so what happened was I had a dream, and the dream was probably 20 some years ago.
Oh, okay.
And within that dream was the entire story of Forgotten Letters.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And I didn't have a recurrent dream. I didn't have, I would think about this dream through the years. And I never really told anybody. I didn't tell my wife. I didn't tell any of my friends about the dream for the longest time. I probably was, I don't know, 10 to 12 years later that I finally told people. I told my wife, I told some good friends of ours, and they both said, "Oh, you've got to write a book." And I said, I don't know how to write a book. I'm not an author. I'm a doctor, and I don't have any training, and I don't have the time. And I would, the friends that I would tell, they were really my best friends, and he was an emergency room physician also, and we would get together often and go to dinner, and we'd get together with other people and go to dinner, and many times they would say, "Oh, you've got to tell your story. It's a great story." So I would go through my dream or the story and tell the story to the people, and they would always say, "It's great. It's a great story. It's a book, and you need to write." And again, I would say the same thing. I don't have time. I don't have the skills. So years passed. I decided to put it down on paper. I did a fairly extensive outline of the book, and put it down on paper, and then kind of left it there for probably another year and did nothing with it. And but during this whole time of 20 years, I would think about the story. I would change it a little bit, but I really didn't change much. I would add to the story. So I put it on paper. I waited a year, and then I thought, gosh, you know, I can't write it. Maybe I should get a ghostwriter. And so I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody in the business of writing books. I had no contacts, nothing. So I went on the internet and Googled ghostwriters in San Diego, and two people popped up, and one was a female and one was a male. And I contacted the female first, and she had an assistant that said, "Well, the ghostwriter is busy. She can contact you in 2 or 3 weeks." And I thought, well, that's okay. I'll contact the other guy. So I contacted the other fella, and I called him, and he responded right away, and we talked. And I said, I have this book or this story, and I gave him a brief synopsis of the story. And once he said, "Well, that sounds like a great story. I can write it." And we talked, and and I said, "Well, where should we need to get together?" He said, "Well, I'm in Denver." I said, "Well, I Googled you in San Diego." And he says, "No, I'm in Denver." And so we talked, and I said, "Well, I'm from Denver," and we were about the same age, and kind of we grew up in the same part of Denver, although he went to a different school. He went to a Catholic school, and I went to just a public school. But we were about the same age, and he said, send me your outline, and we can get together. We'll meet and go over the book. And so I flew to Denver, and we met there was three of us. It was him and another man by the name of Mario. The first guy was Mark Graham, and then Mario Acevedo was really the ghostwriter that helped me. Now, prior to the meeting, I knew that I was going to meet with Mario, and I'm not sure how I knew that he was going to be there, but I think Mark had told me. And they're both authors, and they've both written a number of books. Mark had written probably 4 or 5 books, and then Mario the same. And in fact, I got both of their books, and I read both of their books prior to the meeting, just to see what kind of authors they were, and they were very good. Mark was a kind of a traditional writer, Cops and Robbers, and then other books. And then Mario would write vampire books, werewolf books. And it wasn't something that I was interested in, but I did read them, and he was very good. And so when we met, I told them both that I had bought their books, and then I asked Mario, I said, Mario, why do you write, why is this your thing? Why do you write that genre? And he said, well, that's how I make a living. People like vampire books and werewolf books, and that's how I make a living. It's not that I really care about that. It's just that that's how I write. And he said, I've always wanted to write a book about World War II.
Nice.
And he had already had my outline, and I spent the day with the two of them, and we went over the outline, and Mario had already made another outline, and he had, probably a couple of paragraphs for each chapter, and we went over each chapter. And I at the end of the day, I was very excited, and I said, let's do it. And so I left, went back, came back to San Diego, and the way it worked was that I would write a chapter and write parts of the chapter and then send it to Mario. Mario would write a chapter, and it would really take about 2 weeks for him to write, to send me a chapter. And I would do the research. I'd do a lot of the research, and we would go over it and at the end of the 2 weeks, he would send it to me, and I would go over it and send back my critique on the book. And then at the end, when we were all finished, and that took about a year.
I can imagine, because I mean, I know that when I put together a book, and I mean, I think that the novels that we've written are more or less the same length, I think.
Correct.
In the 115,000 word count, or somewhere around there. And
yes,
yeah, I mean, it takes a long time. And not to mention, once you finally get your rough draft in place, then the whole beta reading and editing process begins, and it's good grief.
Yeah, and I would send these chapters to beta readers, and they would read them, and for the most part didn't give me much feedback other than, oh, that's very good. And I was a little disappointed with that, but that's okay. And so when the book was finished, we met again, and we went over the entire book again, page by page, and it took the whole day. And at that time I said, where do we go from here? Because I had no idea what the book business is like. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know how to proceed. I mean, how am I going to get it published? What am I going to do? How do I get it printed, et cetera, et cetera. And so Mark he was the head of this Graham Publishing in the business. And so he said, you should probably try to get traditional publishing first. And if you can't do that, we can do self-publishing. And I said, well, okay. And so he said, you have to find an agent, and the agent has to decide that they want to represent you and then try to market that book to a publishing house. I said, okay. So what I did is I went online and found agents around the country. And it was very interesting that there was probably 500 agents that I found. There was a list of agents, and I would call that list and look at the agents. And each agent, you just can't find agent number 10 is not going to represent you, because agent number 10 doesn't represent your genre. Each agent has their specific genre that they like and they want to represent.
That's what well, and I mean, when I was trying to go the traditional route way back when in 2010 or even before that, what I was told is you need to get the, oh my gosh, it's like the writers or the publishing Bible of some sort, where it's got every single publishing house and every literary agent listed there. And it's a book that, you know, just enormous. And they're sorted there by genre, whether or not they accept new authors or non-agented submissions. They tell you, you have to give us exclusive review permission, you know what I mean, for 6 months, and then we'll reply. And it's like, oh my gosh, and we don't accept multiple submissions. And so it was kind of nightmarish. Fortunately, this book that I'm telling you about, the publishing guide or something. I mean, I don't know what that book was called, but fortunately, it was sorted by genres.
Oh, good.
So that you know what your genre is, and then you go there and you got about 70 pages of people, and then you can go through and highlight, these people don't take multiple submissions. These people are not taking any new customers. These people, you know, so then you might end up from 1,400 possibilities, you end up with 24, which saves you the trouble of getting rejections from all these people who will say, we're not accepting unagented submissions, or, you know.
Right.
But yeah, it's quite the process.
So I broke my list down to about 50 agents, and each agent wants specific things. They want a synopsis, they want the first chapter, they want the first and second chapter, they want a query letter, they want all of those things, or they don't want any of it. And so I had my list down to 50, and I sent whatever they wanted to those 50 people, and waited and waited and waited and waited 2 months, nothing. And finally I got one person said, we're not interested, we're not taking on new customers at the present time, and waited. And I waited, and I probably, of those 50, 2 to 3 agents responded and says, well, we just can't take your book on. We're too busy, or whatever. And so at the end of that period of time, which was about 6 months, I decided I called Mark Graham up and said, let's do self-publishing. And so I said, I don't know what to do. And he says, well, my son is what can help you out. So that's how I self-published. I called him, and Colin Graham walked me through everything, and we did the self-publishing. We went the self-publishing route. But
they're a publishing company, and they've got an imprint, probably, right? The Graham Publishing.
Well, not really, no. So what they did, so what Colin did is, so we had the book was done, it had to be formatted, right. It had to be copy edited. He got somebody to do the copy editing. He got it formatted. So now it's ready to be printed. And so he recommended we go through Ingram Spark
Mhm.
and do had the print-on-demand company of Ingram Spark print the book.
Mhm.
So he basically did that for me. I mean, he did it all. And so so now I've got a book. Oh, the other thing is I had to have a cover. I had to have a cover. And
That's what I was going to ask you. At what point did you start the process of?
well, so I get the book done, and then I need a cover, and then I have to try to figure out a cover. And Mark Graham says, "Well, we've got this guy that does wonderful covers. He's in Denver." And I contacted him, and I told him about the book, and I gave him kind of a synopsis of the book, and he came up with a couple of covers. I already had a couple of covers in mind, and I thought they were okay. But I was very fortunate. He came out with a wonderful cover. So
right off the bat.
yeah, right off the bat. So now I had a cover. I had and I had some beta readers make some comments, a few comments, and I tried to get some reviews. And Mario Acevedo had another author that's well published and well known out of Colorado, and she read the book and gave me a good review that we put on the back of the book. And so then we were set. So I had a book, a cover, reviews. I had a print-on-demand company, and well, plus all the other stuff that one has to. That was the fun stuff, the acknowledgments, the dedication. You dedicate it to somebody. You have all that stuff that you have to do. You have to do a copyright,
The ISBN,
all of that stuff. So now the book is done, and I said, now what? What do I do? What do I do?
And that's the thing that happens. I mean, and one of the things that is disappointing about the whole process, right? At least for me, I actually kind of resented it, right? Because you get so excited, you nurture this idea that you have, you finally get it on paper, it's got a beautiful cover, all these wonderful things, and then comes the day where you're gonna launch the book, and the real work of marketing the thing falls on your lap, and you're like, oh.
Well,
That's a whole other monster that you have to learn, you know?
So I asked Mark and Mario, I said, now what is the next step? And they said, well, you need to market it. And I said, well, I'm not sure I know how to market. And they said, well, you should enter a contest. So I entered book contests. I got I got 1 or 2 paid reviews, which I'm not sure I ethically feel good about, but I did get them. So I had the reviews, the book reviews. They said you have to do book signings. So I contacted a couple of the bookstores in San Diego. One was Barnes and Noble, and then there was Warwick's up in La Jolla that I contacted and did some book signings there. Contacted, friends and family. Did the social media stuff. I went on Facebook and Pinterest and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. And I was still working at the time, so I was still connected with a lot of people. And when I was writing the book, was interesting because I really told nobody. I mean, I told I told some select friends, but I told nobody about the book. And during that process, a friend of mine told me to turn on the TV one Saturday, and the book channel, there was a book channel, and I don't even know if it's still available. And they were interviewing 4 or 5 authors and publishers. And one of them said, I've written 2 books. The first one I told nobody, which was a mistake. The second one I told everybody. And after that, well, I listened to this lady, and after that, I started telling everybody. I told everybody that I was writing a book and got everybody excited. and that's what you have to do. And I never realized that in the very beginning. And even now, I tell people that I've written a book. I give them a book card or a bookmark, and I tell people all the time that I've written a book. And that's the only, that's one of the marketing things that one has to do to get the word out, because I don't have any major publisher behind me marketing my books.
And that's where we're all at, right? That we don't have that muscle from a publishing house that is going to put all those dollars into marketing in advance and buying the spots that people need, whether it's radio, television, wherever,
Right.
So yeah, I think that to me is one of the more disappointing aspects of being an independent. And well, and I shouldn't say that it's disappointing as much as I kind of resent the amount of effort that has to go into it, because it takes away from the creative process of continuing to produce more books. I'm kind of excited that this year, where I'm focusing so much energy into Waterbury Press and what we're doing here, which is betting on independent authors who
Right.
don't have that muscle, right? I mean, I'm hoping that an independent outlet like this is going to be the thing that independents need to get more in front of people's faces with our fabulous indie gems that are not getting read.
Right.
But so there's a whole lot of energy and effort that goes into trying to make this work. And if my literary project this year was a brand new book, I think that my brain would be fried creatively. I just wouldn't have the energy. But instead, what I'm focusing on this year for my publication this year is a translation of my first book from the Fairy Legacy series.
Okay.
So I'm translating, and besides the work that it is to translate from English to Spanish, there's a sense of relief there, because I don't have to think of, I just have to translate a story that's already done. So I've been having so much fun revisiting my characters from Fairy Sight, that it is just like falling in love with the story all over again.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm thinking that from a creative standpoint, it is a relief that I don't have to put so much energy into creating a new story, and instead I can channel some of that energy into Waterbury Press, and hopefully we'll get lots of cool things happening. You have the Forgotten Letters. Can you show us the cover? Yeah.
I don't know. There you go.
I love that cover. And I love that the story that you tell there. So the other question that I had for you about that is, once you had the book in your hand and you've gone over it, several times, how did the dream match up to the book?
Okay, so the basic story is the entire dream. Within the book, I've added and subtracted a few things, mostly added to the book. The beginning of the book is a little different than my dream, the ending is a little bit different, but the basic story is throughout the whole book. Now, the book has a lot of added material to it to make it the book and the story. I can tell the story, I can tell the dream, and the dream is still in my mind, and it would take me 5 minutes. But the book and the dream are exactly the same. It's really not any different. And the stuff that I added was really a lot of fun. And I always tell the people that read my book that there are 3 things that they need to remember: a baseball, a spider, and a birthmark. And they're all introduced at the beginning of the book, and then later on in the book, they're revisited. And I always tell the readers that they'll get a smile on their face and everything. But let me just kind of talk about the marketing real quick. I don't know how much time we have, but so I didn't know what I was doing with marketing, and I kind of went all in. I did a book trailer that's on my website. I did a audio book, and that was another experience that I had no idea. I went through Apple audiobooks and did a bunch of auditions, had a bunch of readers audition, and finally found somebody that did a wonderful job. I enjoyed that. I did some bookmarks, some business cards, a hat, t-shirts, the website. I'm a little disappointed in pretty much all of that because it really hasn't helped me sell books.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I really think my product is very good. And it's not that I am trying to make a living as opposed to other people. I just want somebody to read my book and say, oh, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that book and story. And when people tell me that, it makes it all worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. I'm completely there with you, and I'm hoping that, or what I'm trying to do is like I said, get our work in front of as many people as we can, because I think that it is a tall order. I understand that, because there is so much competition. I was reading an article the other day about how many books got published in 2020, and it was in the millions. So I'm thinking, yeah, it's a really difficult situation when you don't have the muscle of I don't know, Simon and Schuster or Random House or something like that. You know what I mean? Because they don't publish anything that isn't a bestseller before it even comes out. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah,
And
you're right.
it's because they have entire teams of people taking care of every aspect of the process, right? But I think that there's a spot that I'm trying to put my flag into, and I'm thinking that a small bookshop, it can be supported by a community. And since we're an online bookshop, our community can be the entire country. And what I want to do is I want to make it so that all the books that come out of Waterbear Press, whether it's featured authors like you, or eventually it'll be more authors that publish under this imprint. But I want it to be to where every single book is signed personally to whoever's buying it, right? So it would be like attending an event in person and you get your book signed. And I think that that's something that Amazon can't offer. And I know that we're competing with Amazon, but I also think that there's a large group of people in every community who are militant about supporting local businesses and small businesses and things like that. And this is what they are, who I'm gearing my effort toward, right? So that you know, we can get the attention of, you know, some loyal fans who are going to be putting our names out there and saying, hey, you can get an autograph book by this author, and you know.
Well, I think you've done a wonderful job, and Waterbury has done a wonderful job. The idea is very innovative, and readers want to have a personalized signed book by the author, and it really has great value. And it means a great deal to the readers, and I think it's a great idea. And I could have, many of the books that I've sold through Waterbearer, I've referred the people to you and had them buy the book through you. Now, they are very happy with that. And everyone that I've sent to you that's had the book signed by myself have been very happy with that product.
Well, and that's another part of my efforts. I'm, you know, trying to make sure that whatever improvements and optimizations I can do, I will do, you know, and then as we go on, things will only get better, so that the process is as painless as possible for people. Because yeah, it's kind of difficult to break people from the habit of, I have an Amazon Prime membership, and it's right. Like, but this is safe as well, and it's not, you know. So anyways, I mean, you know, it's uphill, but hey, that's what small businesses are all about anyways. And eventually it's gonna be so completely worth the effort. So now that we are where we are, reality wise, you know, with the pandemic and everything, were you, I mean, how have things changed for you when it comes to book promotions? I mean, did 2020 just wreak havoc, or were you not doing a whole lot of?
So that's very interesting. So I had already scheduled a book signing of my most recent book, Don't Step on the Spider, which is a children's book.
Yes.
And I'm sorry?
I love it.
Yeah, thank you. And so I had already signed, I already had planned a book signing, and I already had it set up. I had posters out. It was at a local coffee shop. And I had put everything on Facebook, and a number of people had responded and said, oh yeah, we're going to come. And this was I was going to do it in the end of March. But I had already set it up probably 2 or 3 months before that. And that's when COVID hit and everything closed down. So I lost that opportunity of having that book signing. And I think it made a huge dent. So I haven't really sold any. I've sold some books, but it's all word of mouth, being on Facebook, or I meet somebody and say, oh, how many children do you have? What are their ages? And I give them a card, and then they buy a book. Or they may buy a book, usually not, but so yeah, COVID has really changed the way one markets, and it's really restricted the marketing for, I think, the independent authors.
Yeah, well, especially those of us who had our calendar full of, you know, like street festivals, or I mean, I would always join the circus every year and go to FanX. And last year they canceled that, and it was like, oh boy, because that was a big bang event for me, you know, where I could show up with all my books and be there for 3 whole days and, you know, doing that thing. They're saying that they're probably gonna have the event again this year, or resume the operation this year. And so they've kind of rolled my reservation from last year to 2021. So we'll see what happens. I mean, with the rolling out of vaccines and all of that, it could be that we're in a position where we can actually, I don't know, go out. And I mean, you know, I wouldn't mind wearing a mask for 3 days at the event, you know, if that's what's needed, but so we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, I'm thinking that from when I started self-publishing, people always told me, oh, if you're an independent, your world is online. And it's so easy to get sidetracked with in-person events that and of course they're way more effective because you have a captive audience when you show up somewhere. Then it's like you're there, they're seeing you, you're making eye contact, and it's a completely different story than posting stuff on social media, right? Because people just scroll, swipe through, whatever, and they can ignore you a lot easier than if you're somewhere in person. But now that those events have been taken away, then it's like, all right, well, this was supposed to be my one avenue to begin with, so I need to go full bore into that, you know?
Right.
So anyway, well, we gotta make the best of it, and like my daughter says, keep on keeping on.
Sure.
But well, I think that that's about all the time we have. So I want to say again, thank you so much for joining me and for this interview, and for letting me have your wonderful books at Waterbear Press. I don't know. Do you have any other ones in the works?
Oh, well, yeah, I do have some thoughts. I haven't started them. Both the children's book, and then I have a kind of it's not really, it may be a sequel to the Forgotten Letters. I just haven't had the time to work on either one of them. But I do appreciate Waterbearer and how supportive you all have been for my books, and helped out trying to market the books. It is very appreciative, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, my pleasure, for sure. Like I said, you've always been such a believer in my cause from the beginning, and I just appreciate that. Just good. Yes. So all right, well, again, as I'm piloting this thing, I am gonna stop the recording. So goodbye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.